Welcome to the Trusted Advisor Show. In this week's episode, the entire crew gets together to discuss a very edgy and controversial topic: how to fire your mediocre vendors gracefully without feeling any stress or guilt. Coming up right now. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Trusted Advisor Show. I am your co-host, Rob Jacoman, and I'm joined by my other co-hosts of this show. We have Laura, Ryan, and Devin both joining us. We have a very hot topic for you today. It's actually, I guess pretty controversial or edgy. But anyway, the title of this show, or the topic of this show, is going to be how to fire your trusted advisor. Or
talk about edgy.
It's so hard to keep a straight face with that, but it's actually pretty fun. No, on a serious note, one of the reasons why we wanted to put this particular topic together is because it's become sort of a hot topic among all of us recently. It's just so hard for clients to fire their trusted advisor or vendor, whatever they want to call it. And it's so interesting because there's like this emotional connection and, it's just so difficult. And I just don't always know why, but we're going to talk about some of those reasons why today, coming up right now. Welcome back, everybody. Here we are talking about how to fire your trusted advisor or vendor or whoever, whatever you want to call them. And but anyway, this is a serious topic, and it's something that we want. Again, we're always thinking about creating value. What areas can we create value to help business owners be more successful? And it's interesting. This is one of those weird areas that often comes up, where we're talking with a client, and it's so interesting because no matter how mediocre some of their vendors can be, they still, for some reason, have the hardest time firing them when they know it's the best interest of their business. Why do you guys think that is?
I think people are afraid to have that tough conversation. We're working with a client right now, and they've been working with an advisor for a few years, and they won't make the phone call. They've been working with us. They're afraid to make that phone call, to have that tough conversation. I think people are afraid of that conflict. It's not something that's fun. So I think that's one of the reasons kind of there.
But why are they afraid to have, I don't understand. If someone's not doing their job, or, I hate the word mediocrity wait, no. Even worse than that, I hate the word I'm satisfied. You like the way I say that? I'm satisfied. No, I mean, the reality is when I hear that word, I cringe, because it tells me, it's a signal to me that person's basically saying, I'm satisfied with mediocrity, or I'm satisfied with just getting by, or, there's so many different places we can go with that. But you guys all hear that, don't you?
All the time. Or I'm all set. But to go back to the satisfied, it brings me back to like your elementary school report card where it's satisfactory or pass fail.
You get the yes.
Yeah, it's
not the U.
It's pass.
Or
it's
sometimes
pass fail. So it's one of those things. It's like, you did a good enough job to get over that hump, but are you doing anything above and beyond? And usually, if people are an advocate for you, they spend the time to actually say that, and they're your biggest fan. So we know when we go into a meeting with a business owner, we're talking to them and we say, in the areas that we discuss, what can we do for you? And if they say, I'm really in good shape with XYZ, and they're giving us all the reasons why they love that person and they love that relationship, then we know that it's not a good fit. And so most times we don't get that reaction. We get kind of I think I'm good to go, or I'm all set, or I'm satisfied.
I just love those. I just love hearing that, because to me, it's like a signal that goes off in my head. Like, hey, wait a minute. This is an opportunity, right? This is an opportunity for us to dive a little deeper into why that relationship is just mediocre, and it also does go back to, and I know there's a lot of smart business owners and entrepreneurs and, C-suite individuals who are listening to this or watching this, and they're probably thinking the same thing. It could be happening to them, or maybe it's not, or they think they're really smart and I can figure this out. And oh, I like my guy or my gal or whatever terminology you want to use. But it's interesting because a lot of, and I find this from my experience, Laura, and I don't know how you feel about it. I find that it's very difficult for them to come up with metrics to measure performance. Like, how do you measure the performance of one of your financial person, your attorney, are they just doing the bare bones minimum to help you solve a problem and be reactive? Or are there, how does that happen?
I mean, I think that one of the questions that I always ask my clients are your vendors providing you with a stewardship report? And that's pretty much a detailed list of everything that vendor has provided for you. And one of the things I always say is, it's not what have you done for me, it's what have you done for me lately.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that's not something that's being brought up to the business owner. And because they are so focused on what they do best in their day-to-day, it's not something that they think to ask.
Yep.
And so that stewardship report really can give you an idea of what has that vendor, hopefully partner, done for you lately.
Yep. So Laura, along those lines, what you just said, you brought up stewardship report. Yes. And I know maybe some people aren't familiar with what a stewardship report is. And I know you touched on it a little bit.
Sure.
But so from my experience, a stewardship report kind of outlines, these are the things that we agreed when we first started a relationship. And this goes back to expectations too. When we started, these are the things that were our goals or our expectations in us starting this relationship. The stewardship report then, over a period of time, you come back and say, these are the things we wanted to do together and accomplish. And then the stewardship report kind of outlines, these are the things we actually accomplished with you. Yes. And this is how we accomplished this goal. And there's a way to measure that. So would you recommend that would be something that would be of value to a business owner to start doing on a regular basis?
Absolutely.
All of their relationships?
Yes, I would say so. When I first met you, Rob, you told me that the most intriguing question that you ask in meetings are, if we were to do business together, what would our relationship look like 3 years from now? And life happens and day-to-day things happen.
You stole my thunder.
And
another one. No, I'm kidding.
A lot of people.
I like that question.
A lot of people, though, you ask that question, there's no follow through. Right? Things happen, personal things happen, business things happen. And that stewardship report can be a measure of the answer to that question 3 years down the road. So yes, I would say it's something that you should start thinking about asking for. And I would say to vendors or partners that it's something that they should start offering to do.
And isn't it interesting too, when you go through, when you put somebody through the paces, right? And you talk about these relationships, and you have these vendors, or I like to call them partnerships, right? Because you really want to look at them as partners. But with that tool comes accountability. Like, there's a way to measure someone's performance and hold them accountable and hold their feet to the fire and just basically say, hey, this is what you agreed to do. This is what we agreed were my goals as a business owner that I wanted to accomplish by us being in this relationship together. What do you say to the business owners not doing that right now, who maybe has some questions about who they're working with and is kind of questioning that relationship and not really has no basis or measurement for how is your person performing?
Yeah. I think it comes down to expectations, Rob. I think people expect in this industry the status quo. Mm-hmm. Their advisor talks to them once a year. Their insurance people come and talk to them at renewals, and they expect, my person talks to them once a year. They do a good job. My advisor checks on us once a year. But when they're not setting those expectations and up front, hey, we're going to talk to you. We're going to be touching you twice a month with new ideas and new content, and really
like having a service, almost like having a service plan.
Absolutely.
You guys are extremely consultative, right? In your approach.
Exactly.
Because when you sit down, one of the things you guys told me when you first started was you sit down with each client and basically outline a game plan based on their goals, your expectations working together. Because again, we always talk about it's a two-way street.
Absolutely.
It's not just a one-way street, because, you know, we've all been in situations where there's been some frustration on our part as well. And that's also probably, Ryan, a gold nugget for anyone listening today who is in that situation. It is also frustrating when you don't take our advice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We're trusted advisors. That's our job. It's sometimes frustrating when you don't trust that relationship and you don't trust that we have a vested interest in your success. We're looking to make your business better. We want to contribute to that. Have you noticed any of that?
Yeah, I think you mentioned and kind of the name of our network and the show is Trusted Advisor. And I think oftentimes businesses have just advisors and people don't spend the time
or vendors.
Vendors, yeah. And whatever you want to call it. At the end of the day, people don't really spend the time. I mean, it's a lifelong thing, regardless of if we're going to be around. That business is a living, breathing thing that those owners want to carry in perpetuity to family members, and every decision that you make along the way is going to directly affect that. And it's also about who you surround yourself with. So having that trust in that relationship, like we say to our clients, the foundation of a successful plan is built on trusted, objective, and honest and transparent relationships. Like we want to focus on the things that are important to them first and foremost, and then we figure out how we plug into that world.
Don't you think it saves so much more time and energy and headaches by actually having a written plan? I know there might be some objections out there to going through this process because, wow, it's going to take so much time. It's going to take so much effort to actually put down together a plan. But haven't you guys come to the realization that having that plan in place and taking the time to actually do it is probably the best investment of your time, because then you're outlining kind of a game plan and a roadmap, kind of like a blueprint, roadmap, whatever you want to call it, for what this looks like in kind of future stepping it a little bit, where you or future pacing it, where you're looking at the future. How do you want it to look like? How do you want this relationship to look like? And I don't think enough business owners are really have that thought process, because a lot of them are just kind of being reactive.
Yeah, I think they're probably conditioned that way just because of some things we talked about on the last show of people being spread really thin and trying to grow. They have a growing enterprise and they have their, they don't have 8 arms where they can be or they can't be in 15 different places at once. I mean, there are things that are levels of focus and they put it in a silo and then they park it off to the side and they say, this person's going to handle it and we'll address it when we need to address it. And so the proactive nature of that is by design. That's the traditional approach from people that are in the sales profession of different products, whether it be insurance, financially related, and clients just don't understand it. And I think until if someone's not bringing that value to you and bringing that to the forefront of every conversation that you're having, you're never going to know that it exists.
Yeah, actually pointing it out.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to point it out to somebody and say, hey, you realize, this is happening or this is going on. But that's also an interesting point. You may get to a level where, and here's where we're going to get into the weeds on. The topic of this show is how do you fire someone? And it's one of the toughest decisions. I know firing an employee is extremely difficult and challenging, but you know what? Like Gary Vee talks about, we're all big fans of Gary Vee. He talks about sometimes that's the best thing for your business. Like that helps you. And it's, by the way, it's not only probably a good thing for your business, but you're actually doing that person a favor. Yeah. Because then they can go on either and help someone else where maybe they have a better skill set or connection with someone else, a better fit. But so it's, again, I always go back to the two-way street. It's sometimes the best thing you can do for your business. Why do so many business owners hesitate over firing someone that they know? It's kind of like in the back of your mind, Laura, to your point about you always talk about relationships and making the connection with business, which is true, of course, because we're talking about relationships. You're in a bad relationship, but you're choosing to put your head in the sand and you're ignoring it. And you're like, you know what? I know that if I let this person go, I'm going to probably go to the stratosphere with this business. Yeah. Why do business owners have such a hard time figuring that out?
because they get comfortable. And I think they get comfortable. Same thing with a relationship. You're in a bad relationship. You get comfortable. You're used to it. And also the thought and the hassle is going to be to find somebody else. Not even the hassle, the cost. How am I find that dream person? That person probably doesn't even exist. That's the thought.
Is it like
they have. It's head
a
trash.
unicorn?
Yeah, exactly. You have head trash. I know exactly what I want. I've been in business 20, 30 years. I've never met that person.
Did you guys ever see that video?
Again.
Did you guys ever see that video on YouTube? The guy that talks about finding a unicorn?
No.
All right, you should watch it. Google it. It's actually funny. You're gonna love it.
Check.
Yeah,
Got it.
You're gonna have to be more specific.
Yeah.
I think if I type in unicorn into YouTube,
I'll tell you what. I'll put a link in our video.
Look out for the unicorn video.
Watch the unicorn video. You guys are gonna love it. It's actually hilarious. But no, Devin, on a serious, what can someone do? I mean, let's get raw here and real. How do you? Because I think there's a good way to do it and kind of a bad way to do it. Because it is, I think that psychologically plays with people's heads. Like, I know I need to make this decision. What steps can a business owner, entrepreneur take to make that even like that separation or that thing happen more palatable, more, there's a good way to do it.
Oh, absolutely. The first thing you do is be prepared. You can't just come in one day and say, hey, just not working out. Sorry. Well, why not? Well, this. Have preparation, prepared the reasons why. And when you do annual reviews, quarterly reviews with that employee, if they have all these awesome reviews leading up to their firing, they're going to be like, what the heck happened? But if you do quarterly reviews, the employees say, you need to get better, you need to get better, you need to get better. It's almost expected. And just be very prepared for that conversation.
So it's like you would treat your vendors vendors. You would treat they're thinking they're vendors. You would almost treat your relationships of your advisors the same ways you would an employee firing, where it's like, you know what? You have to have some performance criteria outlined so that you can go back and say, hey, listen, these are the things that we talked about were really important. You're doing listen, it's just not in my best interest right now as a business owner to continue with this relationship because you're obviously not living up to our expectations.
Absolutely.
I guess that's the bottom line is you're not cutting the mustard. And it's time to let you go.
Mm-hmm. And set those expectations throughout that process and just really, like I said, evaluate them on a quarterly basis.
Yep.
So
agreed.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's a tough thing to do. And it depends on your industry too. Like I know Laura can speak to this. We've had conversations about the healthcare world and benefits in that space and how it's sometimes the pricing is what it is and it doesn't matter who your broker is. So you have to really provide additional value and you got to find someone that's doing that. And sometimes people get stuck. And it's the biggest complaint we get from people that we're meeting with is they have an issue with rate increases, which, you can't introduce them to someone new that that's going to fix that. There's no magic wand that you can wave in that scenario, but ultimately you're looking at who's the right person for the job to help weather that storm to when you're going to go to your employees and say, hey, by the way, your insurance premiums are going to be an extra 20%, 15, 10%, whatever it is next year, having someone that you can lean on to have those conversations and educate people. And so it's all outsourced. If you don't have someone, if you're paying someone for a service or a product and you don't feel like you can truly outsource that responsibility, then I think that's a great metric and a great starting point to say, like, if I were to pay a CFO, just like I'm paying my CPA, for example, and they're not doing a great job, I'm going to fire them. Well, the same should be true for our advisors and vendors and all the other people that we're using to help, provide value to our businesses. So
that's that's a really good point. Also want to bring up is we also want to get, and I know we could be shooting ourselves in the foot here. However, I don't believe that.
We get fired too sometimes.
I was just going to say.
We've all been fired.
This is true. One of our missions and purposes is we want to help business owners, entrepreneurs, anyone who's in that situation, who's facing that situation, be able to objectively evaluate that relationship. And I'm happy to say, and I know there's been situations I've been in where I'm happy to say, hey, listen, you're in a good position right now. You're in a really good space with that particular relationship where I'm maybe competing against that other person.
Sure.
I'm happy to say, listen, stay where you are. you're in the right place. Maybe we can revisit this again next year, or maybe a couple years from now. Like, I'm always going to stay in contact with that person because I want to build that relationship. But I'm also smart enough and wise enough to not be looking for a cheap sale, but actually say, hey, you're in the right place. Laura, you've been in that situation too, right? Where someone has been in the right place and you're just like, hey, listen, and then maybe giving them a little bit of counsel or advice at what they can do better.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I had a mentor who told me once, give away as much free advice as you possibly can. Yep. And I thought that was great because it comes back to you, maybe not from that specific prospect, but somewhere else in business karma world, it does come back to you.
By the way, I guarantee you we're going to get comments from others who don't agree with that mentality. I can tell you, I'm not going to mention any names, but I can tell you that even as recently I've been on LinkedIn and I've heard other individuals talk about giving away, they don't like to give away free consulting. I think that's completely bogus. And I think that's baloney. I think you give away as much free, I don't want to call it free, call it value. Give away as much value as you can, knowing, like you said, it's going to come back to you eventually.
Yeah.
But I can't stand that whole mentality of like, I don't want to give away free consulting. Well, what the heck does that, what does that mean?
You also run the risk of being, if you're that closed and close to the vest on the knowledge that you have, people are not going to see the value in what you're providing. And
they're not going to trust you.
Well, Google is just as effective too, right? So if they want to know, they'll Google it and then they'll say, what do I have you for? If you're not willing to give me advice or consult me on this, there's certain things that knowledge and expertise that we keep and that's where we really earn our money in our respective fields. But there's also things that anything on a cell phone. Yeah. This is the most powerful thing that almost everybody in our society has available to them on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
So that's what you're competing against. And so,
and by the way, if you're sitting, like we're sitting on the other side of this, right?
Sure.
And here, I just want to make a quick point because, and maybe I know this is going to be a controversial statement or thing. So there are situations where you might give a proposal to someone and they turn around and basically give it to your competitor, right? So you run the risk when you're doing things proactively, you're working with somebody in a consultative way. So here's my thing. First off, I can't stand when that happens. It has happened to me. I know it's happened to you guys. And if you're out there watching and listening, please don't do that. It's just not cool. And there's a number of reasons why, because there's also a trust factor with our relationship, right? Me, you on the other side, as the trusted advisor, we have to trust each other. And that to me is a breach of trust, is breaking that trust and that bond that we have, that we're building together. Is that really somebody that you even want to work with anyway? Who's willing to do that?
Probably not, because there's going to be other situations down the road where you need them to be transparent to you in return, just like we're being as transparent as possible to them.
Right.
And it's only going to benefit them to have that open line of communication. And if they're not able to do that from the get-go, there's a possibility it could hurt them in the end anyway, because we need to know the full story in order for us to do our best job.
Yeah. By the way, that has happened. That's a true story. I was working with a service provider in a specific industry, and I literally, and this is probably, it was also because I was young in the business and I didn't know any better. I was kind of naive. So I basically gave all of my best stuff, including my numbers, my proposals, everything, right? And the industry that I'm in you guys know this too, in insurance, you give away everything. And I know I was happy to do this, but I also didn't do a very good job at making sure that I'm also vetting out that person that I'm going to be building a relationship with. It's no different than personal relationships that you're going to marry someone. You're like, it has to work out, right? It's from the beginning. So I had this guy, literally this owner of this company, turn around. He went radio silent on me too, right? So you guys that's happened to you. Mm-hmm. He went radio silent on me. I followed up again, and maybe another week. Then all of a sudden in the mail, because I'm a little older than you guys, there was snail mail back then. In the mail, I got a notification that the markets that I was using got BOR'd by a competing broker. Oh, no. And I just said to myself, wait a minute, I just spent hours and weeks and months working with you on this proposal and putting together a whole plan and a strategy. And like, I thought we were on the same page, seeing eye to eye. And and there was a trust there on my part, but then I ended up getting screwed. And I guess lessons learned, but that's a classic example of, if he's doing that to me, who else is he doing that to? Sure. And do I really want to be in that relationship where there isn't that mutual trust established, right?
Well, like, I think even more, you can take it a step further and say to that business owner, why are you rewarding bad behavior? Your existing advisor did not bring you these ideas.
Right.
They did not bring you these numbers. So you're hurting yourself by, in this one instance, turning around and giving a competitor's proposal to your existing relationship, because they're probably not going to bring those ideas again.
Yeah.
Unless they're up against someone else. So it just goes back to that point of really evaluating what is your person bringing to the table and what is possibly someone else. And in the future, when there isn't a competitor up against it, are they just going to get another, in this example, renewal as is with the new thing because they decided to reward bad behavior in the end? Yep. And that's also a controversial statement, but it happens.
It happens in every industry. Every business you're in, it happens. And by the way, if you're one of those trusted advisors like us who's listening today, definitely do not beat yourself up. Don't get all worked up and worried if someone does that to you, because guess what? That was a blessing in disguise. It was actually a good thing that they went through that. And don't, keep calling that person and following up with them, because just let it go. If you have a full pipeline of good quality prospects that are a good fit for your business and vice versa, then just let it go. Let that one go and just be like, you know what? I learned a lesson. And that was probably the best thing for your business too. So don't beat yourself up about that. Shifting gears. So as we begin to come full circle on this particular episode and talking about firing your bleepity bleep, we have to keep this show clean because we might have to bleep some stuff out. Coming full circle, Devin, if there is one takeaway that you'd want someone to have from today's topic, maybe something that somebody could execute or take action on today, what would that one thing be?
Don't surprise somebody. Like I said, have that process, whether it's your employees or if it's an advisor you're working with. Audit them at least on a quarterly basis. Have a conversation with them. Say, hey, what are you doing for me? What have we done? And really just always audit them, know what they're doing for you. And so when that time comes where we need to fire them or make a change, they're expecting it, and also you're giving them time to show you if they can improve on it or not. So you come talk to somebody and say, hey man, this last year's been tough. You got to pick it up. And they change your game and they're on it and they just do phenomenal service. It worked.
Yeah, exactly.
So you just don't surprise somebody, audit them on a regular basis and at least give them the opportunity, I would say, to get better, because sometimes they think they're doing a great job and they have the capability to do it, but they don't know it yet.
It goes back to what Laura was talking about, is stewardship.
Yep.
Have a regular routine time where you get together and you evaluate, hey, are we on track? Are we accomplishing our goals? Revisit your plan, your service plan.
Exactly.
And Laura talked about this earlier. I always think it's critically important to continue pounding home, talking about that person's goals, because you know what? It's not about us. It's about that person's goals and what's important for them in their business and how you can get them from point A to point B. Yeah. So Ryan, same kind of same thing. What is one takeaway that folks could leave with today that would make a big impact on their business now?
So I think it's important to understand that we're all human beings and that there's a human element to all of this, to business, to sales, to having relationships with advisors and vendors. So, on both sides of it, I think the biggest thing I would want people to take away is don't be afraid to be vulnerable. put yourself out there. Transitioning, firing, moving on from someone that you've been working with for years is a tough thing to do. It's a tough thing for us to do. You know, we in our own business work with other people and have relationships, and sometimes you outgrow those or you have to move on. So,
but it can also be a source of strength.
Correct.
So there's vulnerability and there's also strength.
Yeah, I think that you just have to be willing to. I think the struggle for someone who is in a growth phase of their business is they know what it was like to be out there and vulnerable and be starting from scratch and going back to that place. Even if it's just finding a new insurance agent, finding a new CPA, it's something that presents a challenge to them that maybe they don't want to face at this particular point in time. They feel like things are going well, but being vulnerable is important. I think it's valuable. It's a valuable tool to use to move the needle forward in terms of growing your business. And also on our side of things, being vulnerable and be willing to give consultative advice and give free information. There's a great book out there called The Go-Giver. So anyone who hasn't read that book, it talks a little bit about giving and kind of putting that karma out there into the universe and providing value to other people and presenting new people, new relationships to them in the sense that you feel could advance their life and their business, and ultimately how that ends up coming back to you. And there's tons of people in our world and in our market, and some people I think we'll be able to bring on the show at some point that are great examples of that. So
yeah, that's good stuff. And we'll put a link to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
In those resources in that book. Again, and Laura, the same question, of course, is what would be one takeaway or nugget that someone who's listening could literally execute and implement today?
I would say, going off of what Ryan said, don't be afraid of having that tough conversation.
Yeah.
I know I can't stand having tough conversations, but as soon as I have them, I get this huge sense of relief and like a weight's been lifted off of me. And most of my tough conversations have always progressed my relationships to a better understanding, or they've put me in a better spot personally. So I know that.
So you can grow from it too.
Yeah, you can grow from it.
You now have more of an understanding of what you can do better next time.
Yeah. And a lot of times doing the right thing is not always going to feel like the nice thing.
Yep.
And I think we as human beings, we want to do the nice thing. We want to make people feel good, but to get further, to grow, you have to do the right thing, which is what's right for you.
Yeah, exactly. And unless of course the person you're talking to is they're working with their brother-in-law, or they're
It's always a tough one.
you're gonna fire your brother-in-law, really? or you're someone that's related to your significant other.
Yeah,
that's always a tough conversation to have.
Awkward holiday season.
It's awkward Thanksgiving conversations.
to bring that up at the table. Topic.
Hey, good to see you. Last time I saw you, I fired you.
And you know what? It's so funny. And that's why I always say, you try not to do business with family if you can avoid it. And not because it's just like almost a conflict in a way that you don't want to have those uncomfortable situations. But, a lot of times business owners don't have a choice sometimes when they first start out, because they are kind of talking to their family members. They're, your sister-in-law might be a bookkeeper, right? So you want to minimize your costs when you're starting your business. But sometimes your business outgrows that person and it's time to let them go. But again, it's never an easy conversation to have. I think the point is, from today, and what I personally have learned, because I always learn something new anytime and we do these things and we're all together. This is the beauty of us all being together, is because we can share ideas, we can share our resources, we can share strategies that really work. We've talked about today, coming full circle, we talked about having a game plan for your clients, where you sit down and you evaluate the relationship both ways. Are you helping me to advance my goals as a business owner, and where my company's going? And having goals and expectations and monitoring those, and also being willing to have that tough conversation, make yourself vulnerable. And that could be a source of strength for you, and as you said, having that conversation can sometimes be a weight that's just lifted off your shoulders, because it's the right thing for your business in that moment. And it's going to help you take the next level and where you want to go and helping you achieve your goals. Again, we want to thank everybody for joining us today. It was, I felt it was an awesome show, and hopefully you got some value out of what, we're putting out there. We're open to any comments and any suggestions. So feel free to share comments, ask questions. We're going to share some links in the description below to our website, and where we can also give away some free resources and some other things that can help add value to your business, and also join our email list where we're going to be sending out some great information. Stay tuned for our next show, because we're going to have some really exciting things. We're going to have some guests in the coming year, and we're going to have we're going to have an awesome 2020, and hopefully everybody else does too. And, go after your goals, go after your dreams, and make it happen. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you soon.